Okay, we are calling the meeting open for the May 31st, 2022 rolling board meeting at the College Professional Development Center. Could I have a roll call, please?
Audrey Adamson.
Here.
Justin Anderson. Chet DeSmet.
Here.
Kate Schaefer. Maria S. Trigueros.
Here.
Andrew Wayer.
Here.
Aaron Waldron Smith.
Here. Would anyone in the public like to comment or participate?
I have no public comment.
Hearing none. Consent agenda. Okay. First of all, we're polling C and E2. They will be tabled for next time.
What are we calling?
Polling C and E2, and they are tabled for next time. Okay. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the actions contained in the consent agenda items A through B, D through E1, and F through G as presented. I have a roll call, please.
Audrey Adamson.
Probably.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we should.
Second.
Anybody opposed to this?
We didn't do a pledge either.
It's not on there.
It's not on here.
That's another core value that I know.
Yeah, you tore that one down.
Okay. There's a motion, it was approved. Now, could I have a roll call, please?
Who was our first and second?
Okay.
Audrey Adamson.
Aye.
Justin Anderson.
Aye.
Chet DeSmet.
Aye.
Maria S. Trigueros.
Aye.
Andrew Wayer.
Aye.
Aaron Waldron Smith.
Aye. All right.
Close.
Yes, let's do the pledge.
Yeah, come on.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's Andy's fault, he's distracted. Okay. We need a motion to go in closed session, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Closed session to consider the appointment, employment, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district. Could I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
A motion to move back into open session.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. All right. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve a one-time adjustment to normal district administrative procedure for payment of unused vacation days from a payment of 10 days of unused vacation days to a payment of 20 days of unused vacation days for a cost of $11,620.20 for Teresa Sanders due to her transition from a 12-month administrator to a 10-month administrator. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second. Have a roll call.
Maria S. Trigueros.
Aye.
Andrew Wayer.
Aye.
Audrey Adamson.
Aye.
Justin Anderson.
Aye.
Chet DeSmet.
Aye.
Aaron Waldron Smith.
Aye. All right. Moving on to our board work. Before the board starts talking, Dr. Seb, do you have anything you can talk about with the goals? Or?
Yeah, I just have a couple of documents in front of you. I printed out, again, our closed out goals from this past year, just as a reminder. We didn't have any red, so that was good. We were able to move the needle on all of our areas of focus. We had several green. But I just had this here as a reminder for the couple of yellow items that we are kind of going to continue to focus on. Then the other document that I have, and I was just able to have time to complete this today, so I apologize I didn't get this to you a whole lot sooner, but I wanted to just acclimate you to some of the information that we have in front of you. First of all, our goal for tonight is really just to get input from you all as Board of Education members. We don't have to finalize anything tonight. So I wanted to put that charge out there. Then to review our timeline, as a district leadership team, we met today for the first time to conduct a preliminary data review. And that's a lot of the information that you have in your packet tonight. And then obviously tonight we're going to just engage in some input work from our board members. Then we've got a meeting slated for June and in July, if needed, with the district leadership team to synthesize everything together. So that's our district data, our achievement data, our panorama data, our teacher climate survey data. So we're going to pull that data, the survey input that we now have from our parents after the spring parent survey, and kind of pull it all together in conjunction with the input that you all provide us tonight. And then we will synthesize everything together. And then the goal is to bring back that final language to you at the July meeting. So this meeting tonight really helps us have more time to do that rather than trying to do it at the end of June. So we appreciate your time tonight. So that's the timeline. And really when I tried to think about how best to tackle this in a user-friendly way that keeps the conversation moving, it's really just the questions that you have in front of you. So we can focus on a little bit about what the data is telling us. And I know you have not had a ton of time to take a look at that, but just wanted to make sure that you have that in front of you. And really most interested in you all as Board of Education members and representatives of the community is what is your vision for our district for the next 3 to 5 years? And I think one of the great things that this board does is while we have one eyeball on the now, you all do a really great job of thinking down the road as well. So we don't get there and realize there's more we could have done. So I appreciate the visionary approach that you all have. So I guess I would like you to think about where do you see us 3 to 5 years, and then come back to 2 things. What are we doing now that will help us get there and we need to keep doing? And what new things do we need to focus on to help us get there? So really those are kind of the 3 meaty questions, and I've got some poster board back there, or however all you choose would be easier to work and brainstorm. We can do it at the table as well and take notes. And then once we kind of have answered those 3 questions, lastly, it's just prioritizing. What excites you the most? What do you think is the most important? So we can circle and star those items. And then how do we prioritize what's left? And I think that input in conjunction with all of the other input that we have from our stakeholders should put us in a really good position this summer to synthesize and pull our new goals together. And then lastly, I would just say, once it comes off of this pace chart, it doesn't mean it goes away or it's not important. In my opinion, it means it has become a part of our fabric of who we are and how we operate. So that'd just be a last piece I would throw in. But other than that, those are just suggestions. However you all would like to approach the work, I'm certainly open.
I think the first thing I would like us to do is everyone just to take a second to read through this. So we're just have all the information. So.
Should have 2 columns. The column on the left is from our parents, and the column on the right is from our seniors.
She'll probably have them finish the next one. And she's got these two. She will do coaching sessions. Bless you. So she's building that as she
Okay, guys, do you want to move over there or would you prefer to stay here? Thoughts?
What are you looking?
Because you're in my line of sight, that's why.
Everybody here. Let's move down.
Okay.
I just want to do that.
You're like the kid I have to. Okay.
Trying to see what kind of niche you have.
Rings.
Markers are there to your left, Audrey.
Are they asking for snacks?
Rapid City.
Right.
Who has the narrator?
You should see my signature.
I can try, but
I was gonna say, how long you have books up there?
No, I have terrible handwriting. All right.
we're tagging you.
Tag it.
And then first you get your first.
Okay, so our questions are, what is our vision for the next 3 to 5 years? What work have we done that needs to be continued? And what new areas of focus do we need to initiate focus engagement? Okay, so let's actually. Oh, I believe that. Okay, let's start with what work have we done that needs to be continued. Have already have our peaceful from the past and discuss the
I think for that one, we've done a really good job here. I want to use the expansion on that. I know that there's been a lot of discussion about it. Just the more options we have for our students, and the earlier we start presenting with those options, I think the better. I think we're doing a really good job with something that I don't think we can, really rest until we feel like we've got.
Continue to evaluate.
A full approach.
Yeah, so continue to evaluate new pathways to have.
starting as early as we can.
Yeah, I mean, the more that at least, you're giving even middle school students, the kind of laying out what the options are going to be when they get there. More exposure. Yeah, thank you.
That's a really nice handwriting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Who said that mine would be fine?
I did.
She just wanted you to do that. Yeah. It would be really small and going up there.
I think I know it's something we're working on, but in terms of representation of our staff, having it represent the students that are serving our community.
Inclusion.
Yeah, so yeah, in terms of that, just I think it becomes more obvious to me every time we're at something like graduation, and then you see the full scope of like who our district is and who our students are, and then we know that our staff at all levels, as representatives, I know we're making efforts for that, but I think that's something that is probably hard to push.
Aggressive.
But I know that also, as somebody who works in college, like that is hard because everybody is doing that hard push.
Well,
and so
to some degree that's difficult to control because when you put a position out, you can't help who applies.
No.
And you can't help who's the best candidate. And so that is a difficult balance to find.
Yeah, I think it's just trying to make sure that the applicant pool though continues to be so that way we have.
And that's one of our yellows.
Yeah. So I think that is a continue.
The other word, you interested?
Favors.
There we go. Because I think that helps with one of the, as we eventually go, is that sense of belonging that showed up several times. I think that's handed.
Besides the NAACP and the Hispanic, I also had sent you a couple of other ones that I received from LULAC, being a LULAC member. Those were there's two that I sent additional from that. So it's been a while, so
I will look.
Yeah.
That's what I think that the contact program is.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, the program is
I'd like to see that.
We are now, we have our contact posting at Lincoln University in Jefferson City as well as Chicago State.
Yeah, I just chatted with the person who heard last week. So.
And they have big numbers already of kids signed up for Grow Your Own. I think I had that report last week.
Exciting.
Yeah. And all 6 seniors passed their para exam, which was really exciting.
That's so big.
right smaller.
My daughter was in 6th grade. It's nice.
I would also add to the yellow to make sure that we are creating ongoing professional development that is relevant. Yes. Relevant professional development.
I think there's in there that feedback that was coming through in terms of just making sure that they know it's teachers might feel like it was useful, which is hard, and that's hard too because it's useful to a small percentage, and then the rest turns out that everyone does something different. So
We saw it in how the staff responded in the panorama survey and also in the culture survey.
To that end of professional development, you see a lot of students where they feel like some of the teachers just aren't very engaged. And from what I had that my child went through, where it almost seemed like there was a difference to any student or person in that building. So to really, as part of that professional development, really make sure that we are making sure that our faculty and staff are very engaged and are recognizing potential issues or
maybe that needs to be in the new area.
Okay.
No, I'm agreeing with you. I think that's really key.
That's really.
Yes. Say that all again.
But I mean, like what you're saying, like a way for staff to recognize, like a difference and how to refocus. How do you refocus? I don't know how you say that.
Yeah. Right.
especially, these last couple of years. And so
Mm-hmm.
you have the staff members who truly are ones who I think super care that already are reaching their points, burnout points. And so how do you,
We have a metric for teacher-student relationships on that panorama. Which maybe is a little bit about what you're talking about, chat. And we've been able to measure that.
I can concur, Chad. I heard from several students I interact with regularly and other families that especially the second half of the year, and the deeper it got into it, the more indifference, the harder it was to get help. The staff teachers would say they'd help, but then the student and the parents didn't feel that help follow through. And indifference kept coming out as well. And what I heard is, especially as the school year got later.
How to, it comes down to burnout. I mean, I kind of try to find a way to mitigate that burnout.
So speaking from yourself, being a high school teacher.
And that happens then.
Yeah, never get person right, but
Usually by hand.
so is that the area of focus or anyway? Yeah.
Improving teacher student engagement. How's that? Engagement relationships.
Yeah. I think if you improve those relationships, you've got more likely that your teachers and your students both aren't going to experience much of that burnout because they're more connected to each other and they're going to be able to recognize because there's more connection when there are potential issues.
I think that's what the for the students it said so that they get to know us, you know, more better. Yeah. And teacher, you know, it's busy, but you know, those relationships you need to build as well. Find some way to build it.
The other freshman who, well, tough here, but he had teachers that he didn't feel like he could talk to because it was always dismissive. And he's a student that he's struggled since kindergarten, and so he doesn't feel like he can go and engage with the teachers because they seem to be like, well, I don't have got 25 students in this class. So that gets to the point where he's
I think another one maybe to go with that, then based off of there's information here regarding the just open honest communication among staff and decision making when it affects me of how are we then improving those relationships between all of these, you know, at the high school, new but the same at the same, you know what I mean? There's some stuff there as well as at the other levels, just to make sure that that relationship between teachers and stuff too, because we have some teachers that are being more successful in all of this, have figured out ways to balance burnout combined with trying to find some momentum or motivation. So how do we pair people up? I know the leadership team for some of that other communication pieces is coming into play, but I don't know how we can just focus on that of how everybody staff-wise is supporting each other and, you know, best practices that are happening of people who are able to do things and how they're sharing that, recognizing when some of their fellow teachers are struggling or everything. But I think that relationship, I think those other relationships, that next level needs to be there as well. Focus on teacher to teacher, yeah. Teacher to teacher or teacher leaders too. I mean, we're doing some of the leadership work. So I don't know what we're planning on doing for leadership teams. Is it going to be more like PLT thing? I mean, like what is happening?
I think they're going to have 6 or 7 different people kind of cross section in the buildings based on position to make sure each group is represented. And so I think that building leadership team should help.
Because then that can filter down to this. So that way, yes. Okay.
So I talked to Rachel about
their peers.
Leadership improvement. We do that in vendor. So like on our VLTs, there's obviously our principal. There's someone who's in we have a para-educator who's like, so all the voices are represented in the VLT. Not really lots of would be awesome.
Back to our vision that might help us come up with more of the new areas.
I wanted to add to the new areas of focus, make sure there is follow through with our professional development, make sure that we're actually implementing it. We didn't just sit there and listen to it, we're following through with it. Whether you like it or not. I know.
Subset of both that and the other work things to continue that we chatted about at the review of the case goals was with all the SEL stuff is that we know that we have some staff that is really competent and comfortable having discussions and doing those things, and other staff that are not so much. And some of them try and do it awkwardly, and others, I think, based off some feedback, probably have just been like, I'm going to look at the sheet, but I'm not going to do that today, and let us do this instead, you know. So how are we checking in that follow through on that these things are happening, but also how are we training and making our teachers feel comfortable having conversations that are maybe not what they were used to.
Kind of honed in on that today as well.
Yeah.
All those back to tradition, you know. I love tradition, but you know, there's room for men and based on student body.
Rachel, you may have said this, but you guys are creating a discipline metric for elementary to high school, or did I make that up in my head?
No, Kristen has been working on that. You want to speak to that a little bit?
Yes, so the district discipline committee met in May, and we worked on a code of conduct that is 3 different levels. So an elementary and a middle school and a high school level code of conduct. Now we have code of conducts all over the place. We have student policies all over the place. We have board policies. And so we're trying to pull it together into one document, but not necessarily having it too big. So if you look at the high school handbook that's online, it's like 100 and something pages. It's just a beast of a thing. And so we're trying to just narrow down into student conduct, athletic conduct, and also a parent code of conduct. Because unfortunately, we have some parents that struggle with that thing as well. And so we have, I've sent the drafts out to all of the levels for them to look at. The high school teachers that are on the high school discipline committee actually have a draft of just the high school one. But in that we put some more specifics about behavior, our rubric that the principals use for making decisions about potential behavior consequences. There's more specifics about dress code. We actually have a funny looking graphic in there that really gets to specifics about the dress code, which has come up as you saw in the survey as well. And so that is, that's been sent out. And once I get that back, it looks pretty good. It's just kind of long. They're each about 30 pages, anywhere from 23 to the high school would be 30 pages. We hope to push that out to parents. We're not sure how that's going to look necessarily. We have a few ideas. We're fine tuning the pieces of it. But we want to make sure that everyone's real clear on what our policies are, what our discipline procedures are, categories of offenses. There's some new pieces in there about these sick days, mental health days that became the law on January 1st, as well as making it real clear with parents that board policy 830, which is visitors conduct on school property. And so that hopefully people won't say they didn't know that, I couldn't find it, I didn't know that was a rule, that we're making it real obvious. So I'm still kind of thinking about how best to put that out, and we're going to talk about it, I think, a little bit later in the summer as we get closer to the school year. We didn't want it to be part of that Skyward registration because, as you know, from a parent, you go click, done. Yeah. And so there's really no thought into it. We want to be a little bit more in their face. So we're just trying to figure out how that needs to look and whether they should sign it. But that's a whole nother task. So if you guys have ideas, I would love to hear them because, again, we're still formulating and those things are still in draft form. They're looking pretty good, but nothing's ever, you know, it's still draft.
I like the idea of the continuity.
Yeah.
Just so it's flows from kindergarten to 12th grade.
But we looked at what, I mean, as we're trying to figure out how to roll out something other, I guess, you know, large unit districts and other places our size and kind of what they are doing right now and have maybe what they felt are successful.
You know, I have Rock Island's code of conduct, and theirs is pretty long, I would say, really long. And so I called my counterpart over there to see how they use theirs, how they roll it out. And she said they were in the process of revising theirs as well and wanted to pick my brain. That's usually my first go-to because we're so similar in so many ways.
Yeah.
But we're trying to be super thorough. Yeah. Super thorough, super obvious. And that signing piece, I can remember like when I was a parent, I signed one and so that was all at registration. There may be some opportunities to do some of these things at fall open houses. or unpack your backpack night or whatever that might be. But I also, most of these things are online in the other districts. Like if you look to Davenport or you look to, UT is just a high school only. I'm really hoping for a comprehensive kind of piece of it.
It's a handbook that we use there. Yes, there's a page where you're supposed to have your parents sign it. That can happen because everything, they still got their handbooks and stuff, but they were struggling as well with the, the rules, the policies, and looking like all the high schools were. What are the rules? What is a school? Yeah. So,
and there are some of the things that you were talking about too, is how does restorative justice fit into the code of conduct and helping us understand what it is and what it isn't, and how to marry restorative pieces to a consequence for a violation of the code of conduct. So that's something that we know that we need to educate folks on as we tighten things up, as well as we talked about today, finding the high schools, as you and I have spoken about, that have found that marriage, that have found that, cohabitation of restorative and a consequence, so that we're not just only doing a consequence, or we're not just only doing restorative. So as we seek to tighten that up, we also seek to educate our parents and our kids, and also find out who's doing it really well. And then once we figure that out through our contacts in Luda and other districts in Illinois, then we know what kind of PD and how we can coach our teachers to what those strategies are that are working really well. So we're on a hunt this summer.
Well, we usually just have a freshman like orientation, right? Just
That we groups
too.
Yeah.
And we also need to.
Mr. Moore was also talking about
classes as well. Make sure the other, even though they're upperclassmen, they know the rules and the policies.
Yeah, we need a recalibration.
Yes.
One thing I see very commonly through both the parent side of this and the senior exit side of this is accountability. Whether it be on code of conduct or it be dress code. I can't tell you how many times I walked through high school this year. I'm sorry, I see more scan on a lot of beaches.
It's not.
And nobody said anything. They just want to know. If we have a code, we have to follow it, we have to enforce it. If not, we might as well just throw it out the window, because that's how the students perceive it's being treated currently. I fully agree. We need to tighten it up and hold folks accountable. Yeah, restorative piece of it, absolutely. But also an actual consequence. Maybe a little painful, but here's how we get back. Because that's how life out there treats you. If these are upperclassmen, these are high schoolers in some of this, then they got to be ready for how life's going to treat them in the real world June 1st. And they get out of school on May 30th.
Well, you guys are starting with that discipline piece, you guys already started that discussion, right? Like you said, you're looking at the handbook, just pages long. So it starts with the leadership and administration, and then the teachers have to get together and make sure that's done as well. Because we've had those conversations too. We've struggled with all of that. So
one thing I think ties into that is holding deadlines. Students are given a time for when a paper, when an assignment, when a homework, when something should be turned back in. But they can redo it a few dozen times at their leisure, anytime throughout the semester, quarter, for better grade, better opportunities. Some leeway like that helps them not give up. And if they're struggling to work through it, keep improving. But if the can for a deadline just keeps getting kicked down the road, then again, that goes back to no accountability. At what point do we actually have to follow through? And I see a big lack of that in that accountability category.
So how can we write that into like a super big teacher here, a workable goal? Like how do we write that out as something that can be put into a metric, like how we have a teacher here? How do we write that out as
We'll probably figure that out. Probably should have started.
Yeah, vision.
the committee that's working with the code of conduct is a really nice representative of elementary and secondary people. So there's been a good cross-section by level. So, I mean, for starters, it really is implementing that code of conduct by level, and it helps give us continuity across our schools. So I think
school is planning on teaching the expectations in here that first Friday. And so they've been working on, they're gonna work this summer on creating lessons. They're gonna work this summer on creating that first day expectations. So they're gonna teach what's in here very intentionally. They're gonna have a series of class meetings. They're gonna pick every administrator in front of every class. And so they're gonna be a little bit more, well, a lot more intentional, I think. And so their goal is to do all of that. I don't know how we measure that, but I know they plan on doing all of what's in there.
How I would first suggest the word on that wordsmith and prove everybody knows that. But just setting very clear expectations. Going back to make it clear, make it known, make it available, but then also regroup with an honest and on occasional and maybe necessary painful conversation sometimes. Are we holding that? Are we keeping the expectations? Are we letting them slack and drop off?
Go back to our vision, which can tie into these things. Like it sounds like we want to create safe, structured environments that have, you know, the things in place that allow our students to progress from K through 12 and reach, you know, figure out the pathways, reach their goals. I mean, those are
Okay, so say that all again.
yeah. So creating safe and structured environments.
All right, so let's put that in our vision.
Right, but let me, I think I missed the part of yours. Clear expectations, what else did you say before?
And then evaluate, follow through. Are we holding to the expectations? Or is it third and a half and fourth quarter and we're ignoring them because we're about done with the year and burnout, you said? One of the things I'd like to see change over the next few years, and I see it directly listed by the parent side of this and alluded to in a lot of ways on the student side, is more interactive. I'd like to see less screen time. Big time. All the medical, all the doctors, all of the pediatricians out there say keep it to 2 hours or so a day. And what do? We put them in school where they need 6 hours a day, and then they go home and still use them for a bit. One of the biggest things, one of the biggest things early in my tenure here was the legal lane, getting Chromebooks to every student's hands. I gave a lot of pushback on that. But now it came very necessary. The pandemic, holy cow, it was great that we were ahead of that curve.
But to be fair, not all screen time is the same.
You know, that is true.
Like, you know, I kid watching other kids play with toys on YouTube, which that's very different than like educational, like researching.
And that's why I didn't suggest to eliminate, but reduce, more hands-on, more interaction. The students are asking for groups to interact with, to be answering. And all the computer does is continually take that human interaction element out of when it's such the focus.
We're preparing kids for the future. Like how much time do you spend? I mean, like every workplace you spend a lot of time.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But I get your point, like play is so important.
How about
So also hands-on collaboration, not just through the electronic devices, blending it as opposed to eliminating the screens, but blending hands-on versus
More intentional use of
absolutely
screen time or
balance?
electronic.
And why do we not block when you're on the school's Wi-Fi in the school building? Why don't we block the social medias? Why can they sit there and listen? It's not. Why can they sit there and play on their Facebook, play on their YouTube, listen to this and that?
Are they on their phone or are they on their?
Oh no, You can go on your student Skyward and get a report of what they're doing on the computer and when they're doing it. And it's just a long list sometimes. We're supposedly in class, but doing this or doing that instead.
I think that's cut down a lot, and you know, because it was, yeah, I think it's cut down a lot. We have
why aren't those blocked when the kids are supposedly in session in class?
Greg, do you know that?
Facebook is blocked.
Is it?
Yeah, Twitter is for some teachers an instructional resource.
Okay.
So I don't know how much that's blocked. The other ones, the major ones we do, it's just hard to keep up with what they can get into. Honestly, I don't know if any filter that can do it all, but you know, we do.
In fairness, I use YouTube to instruct. Like if I'm looking up a video for something, because it's free.
GoGuardian helps measure
Yes.
what kids are doing as well.
Yeah, and it's good that our teachers can see reports of what they're doing, and with GoGuardian Teacher, they can wrap students up into a session where they can't go out of it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Craig, but GoGuardian, like a lot of these things, they found a gap because there's always some new portal that they zoom through something else.
Yes.
So the filter learns and adapts. So it's
Okay, so first, I would like you to put what you.
Yeah, so I was just saying, our vision for creating a safe, structured environment that I think means. And I mean, I'm saying that coming from safe and structured environment. Because, you know, a lot of our kids, unfortunately, have not been as much in safe and structured during pandemic, and coming out of that, we've seen, so creating that.
Well, a lot of our students live in trauma all day long. Like their life is full of trauma. So when they come to school, it should be a safe environment.
and that was one of the first things that I wrote down too. Continue safety.
I think that something came up a bunch too, I think, was that sense of belonging. And I think we, as a district, I mean, our staff, our community struggles with our district is different than what our district was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 3 years ago. There are people that are teaching that were here 3 years ago, and they're like, it's not the same. And so I don't know how we, as a vision, be able to say that we recognize who our district is, like, what is our community? What is Aline? And like who we are and how we're serving those students. And serving the students, and not that we don't every day, but how do we vocalize and intentionally plan for serving the students we have, not the students that maybe some of the people in our community and staff wish we had. So
I think there's also a portion of those people like, well, it never was what you thought it
yeah,
was.
well, there is that too. Exactly. It's idealized.
So let's put it this way. Creating curriculum that represents creating curriculum that represents creating curriculum that represents who we are, creating curriculum that is relevant to our students today.
That engages.
Relevant and engaging.
I mean, I wrote down constant
And engaging. Not to pick on Charles Dickens, but I don't know that, you know, great expectations is relevant.
I know there was something added into the social studies curriculum about, for example, the LGBTQ community. I'm not giving the scope, I don't know. You know,
Is that the history?
yes.
Yes.
So it's big.
But yes, relevant, up to date.
Can I also
To our students, you said?
I definitely like that.
Okay.
from a curriculum standpoint, I'm sorry. It's like it's creating curriculum, it's creating instruction.
That's
Yeah,
what I
exactly,
mean.
yeah,
Thank
right.
you.
So if you
Thank
can
you.
adopt curriculum,
Yeah.
so the semantics for the teachers.
No, instruction.
Yes, thank you for correcting.
Instruction.
Implementing curriculum in ways.
Yeah. But it's truthfully from what you're saying, it's planning for instruction or instructional practices is what I'm
And I think also so that our kids can see themselves.
That's what I meant.
Yes.
Related.
And I like what you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Matt.
Well, he's the expert. Well,
Yeah.
that's his skills.
So, on the subject of vision, I'd like to see, we talk about how, you know, the community thinks of the district one way, when it's really not the way that some people think it is. And I think we need to be kind of out there more and more of a community partner. Not to say that we aren't, but just get out into the community more engagement with the community as a whole, as opposed to, you know, I think a lot of things that I saw were people saying, you know, we don't have as much of that anymore. And that's part of that was COVID, you know, and just certain things that kind of couldn't happen anymore, and certain things that maybe people just don't want to happen. But
That was one of the top responsibilities, how to improve those kind of issues. So,
Yeah, we gotta be like, this is, I think. We're not just like, we're not a school district like within it, like we're connected in every way to this community. And we have to be like, we're not, the people that live here are not like district taxpayers. You know, like we're all one community, so we need to blend more. I mean, we do. I mean, look at the way we work with Park District and all that. But you just have to promote those partnerships. You know?
Well, I like that. So like the band was at Tornado this week.
Yeah.
And it was phenomenal. Like things like that. Like the marching band was there and they played for the kickoff. And it was a really nice connection between the community and the schools.
Yeah, like look, if you follow the Moline Police Department on their social media, like they play up our partnership with them a lot. So like we can do that with not just police department, other.
so I heard promoting, you know, or on the top responses, so it's more effort to reach them, so different cultures. So I will definitely culture there.
Just engagement with our more community engagement.
But also doesn't necessarily have to be even, you know, it just the district being community focused, you know, having more opportunities like that where, you know, we've got the band going and doing that, and you see the football team out doing landscaping and things like that. Just more opportunities, more, if they are happening, making sure that we're making sure that people know what's happening, and, you know, putting ourselves more out there so that we're the positive things in the community when we do them or see.
Promoting them, shining a spotlight on those things as they're happening.
Spotlight.
And not just a one-time, hey, this is happening, but advertising style.
Yeah.
Well, I think it goes back, I mean, like we did years ago before this part was being built, the center and stuff, like a choose Moline sort of thing. Like how do we circle back to that as, you know, promoting, doing the engagement.
And that we are being part of the community, you know.
Like
in all aspects.
yeah, in all aspects. Like the athletics, they always do the camps for the kids, you know, the cheerleading camps and stuff like that. More ability for this district to bring more people, right? Like the more people we bring in, the more people see how great our schools are, engage more. It's got to be more than just like kids and parents. It's got to be the whole. It's nice.
Blending community and school district.
I like what you said there, Andy. You know, the more people we bring in, the more we can show who we are, and there'll be more clarity and fewer false narratives.
Yeah,
when promoting a positive buzz.
Less distrust. You know, we have these community conversations, and you know, they're like, wow, you guys are gonna be teaching your kids, you know, how to rob banks or whatever, whatever ridiculous thing they come up with.
Yeah.
But like, you know, if they're more brought into the district, they're not gonna.
I think that's a really good point.
And the more they see those things happen,
Yeah.
you're right, the more they're running, the higher the expectation, hey, we can do that, we can be a part of this. And it draws people in exactly like you're saying.
Well,
It gets the
right.
words out there more than they get involved, and that solves a lot of the requests.
And then when when people hear ridiculous things, you know, they're like, no, that's not happening. You know, like
They've got that relationship with the district, and you're right,
more trust.
they see those things right away.
And when we're having to deal with it, maybe they'll be a little more understanding. You know, like,
No, I think that's a fantastic point.
All of that feeds in, of course, to student achievement being number one.
I put like a little tab underneath that and helping our schools be service oriented. So that connects them to their community, so they can see value in their community and wanting to help their community.
service-based learning. Promote service-based learning.
Okay. Promote service. Like I know one of the things that again, the police department did with Moline a few years ago, where they all wore the pink shirts. The police officers sold the pink shirts, the rest of them sort of wear this, and they had football and all the kids wore pink. Just like those, it can be small stuff.
Things that unify.
I cut Dr. Savage off for the creating instruction that is relevant and engaging, and students can see themselves in it. I'm gonna write it right here.
That's okay, we'll see it. Okay.
I think both that and the top one tie into the whole sense of belonging thing that has shown up. So I don't know how we look at that, whether it's just creating a safe instructor environment or there's a sense of belonging for both students and families and staff.
I think it's important to put the family piece in there.
Yeah.
So.
And we can measure the sense of belonging now as a district.
Yes.
We've got
I know
the numbers
and track or
yes.
baseline. Maybe we can just write another small thing at the top, like creating a safe structured environment with a sense of belonging for students, families, and staff. Or just draw an arrow down from that top.
Yep.
There you go. There you go. Okay. Go ahead.
David.
So with a sense of belonging for students, families, and staff.
So
where students, belonging for
Students, families. Thank you for writing. Much appreciated. My handwriting is good if I'm writing normal versus if I'm writing on a board. That just
I'm okay on paper, but if it's really small, like writing on a whiteboard. Yeah.
okay, one other thing I want to add for our vision for the next 3 to 5 years that I see is consistent needs, and I have noticed as a parent from K through 12. I think our websites and our social media need to be consistent across the board. Like, so like there's nothing on an elementary web page. So there's just like, you know, some web pages for a school, there's information, and the next one there's not. So I think there needs to be
consistency and
consistent.
messaging.
Thank you. Consistent messaging across all platforms.
I think that's, if I'm not wrong, on a school by school basis as to how they put things out. So if it's going to be on the web page or if they're using Class Dojo, So they've got, depending on what platform they use.
It's just like, that's what I mean, is like, you should be able to find staff on every web page. You should be able to find an email on every web page. If you're using Class Dojo, use your Class Dojo link. Like, just
increasing the accessibility of information.
And just to speak to Class Dojo, I don't really need to do something on the board, but I think that's something that, at least for elementary schools, every school can use. It's been a great way to engage.
We have a lot of elementaries. We never really truly made it like a non-negotiable. I mean, it's been getting buy-in because it goes back to what you guys are talking about. It helps with communication and it sets the expectation for the parents. And when you've used it, you know, it's instantaneous. We control the narrative because the parents know in real time what's going on, right? So
and that's one of the things, you know, having had my kids have that years.
I can find out exactly how many buildings exactly are using. I mean, we're a majority of elementary right now, but
it would be really neat to find something in the secondary level that is the same. I mean, you know, depending on the teacher, you might get an email from a teacher, here's the progress report, and that's all you're getting. And I know that it's a lot more difficult because you're dealing with a lot more students, a lot more teachers, but finding some platform along those lines is, I can't say enough for that. Just how nice it is to be able to look and see, and it does do a really good job of engaging parents. As long as the parents look at it, it does a fantastic job.
Well, and I would say just my personal testament is using it. It saved me a ton of time because the parent, it helped open up those communication gaps that existed prior because I was always using the telephone or an email, but it's like instant messenger with that.
I think that's valid, Chet, though, and we did see that a lot in the survey data about parents wanting more engagement at the secondary. Right, so I think that's a good point.
With having, I mean, my daughter just finished 5th grade and I knew what was going on all the time. It was a very nice thing to be able to see. And then I've got a freshman who every couple of weeks, one of his teachers might send an email saying, hey, here's where his grades are.
We have to remind that just for like clubs or like teachers.
Well, I think teachers use that. I get reminders all the time.
I was looking at the app on my phone actually today, and I was like, what? Because I've never gotten an invitation.
So consistent and clear communication.
I think like Jimmy, you're talking about the resources, getting those things that we do hear though, like your classroom, a class for your child then might use Class Dojo, and then you have another parent who's like, I don't get those updates. Why don't I get those updates? And it could be, I mean, you have teachers who do not want to try new technology. You teachers maybe don't want to have a one-on-one access with parents, you know, whatever the reasons for why they don't want to engage in that way. But maybe there are some things that if we are seeing good success with them, that then we have to be like, okay, we've seen success in this percentage of things. We need to, this is a non-negotiable at some point because it's a tool that benefits our students and our families. And
I think that's a good point because we've got a number of years of data now.
Yeah, education drops off in middle school.
Oh yeah, you don't know anything. I would say the part though in the middle school thing, it is maybe trying to figure out some consistency. At the beginning of the year, I always appreciate like I get the emails of like this is the team at Wilson or this is the high school newsletter, and it happens a few times really consistently. And I know the same thing is when I start initiatives at work all the time. I'm like, I totally will have the time to maintain this thing, and then a few weeks later, you're like, oh, and then like 3 months later, you get the weekly update that you haven't gotten for 3 months, you know. So I don't know how we can support or get, but that's a time issue too. I mean, it's whoever. So how do we support giving the people who are responsible for that the time they need to do the communication? And I don't know. So maybe that's just a goal of how do we build in time for better communication, because it's, I mean, that takes away from instructional time, that takes away from, you know,
just like some kids, a lot of parents start and speaking from the EL department, they don't know how to even deal with, open up their email, right now.
We're going to have an opportunity to really think about the consistent and communication and website to website. Some of them have been posted by Edleo, and they just, I think the service dropped off.
Yeah.
For us quite a bit. I think screwed up our staff about 3 years ago. That's to end up getting that. So Greg and I have actually, we had a chance not too long ago to start talking to different people. And Craig's really will be in charge on that. So we're going to be able to have an opportunity coming up to review some of the ways that we can review will give us some new communication access.
And I think to piggyback, I think that the feedback about Dojo, and I also think the feedback about increasing at the middle school, high school are two really solid value points.
Because that's said over and over and over.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things we talked about a little bit ago, we didn't think about many of those remote panels yet. Just wanted to clarify if it should or not, was that about more intentful use of screen time or balancing of hands-on in groups as opposed to that as well?
An increase in collaborative learning.
Sure.
I'm just trying to put it in on the vision.
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, he's probably,
I think, part of that is collaboration is that we can't get, you have to be 6 feet apart or whatever, COVID and all that.
Yeah, the kids are craving that now too.
Yeah.
Project-based, hands-on.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, I would like. Yeah, I think project-based learning and collaborative, like, it's odd to me to see, even as a lot less like project-based or anything. They weren't learning with their peers, they were learning on the screen. And, you know, and some of the time I think that when you get project-based, you're engaging the students more because they're getting to be creative and learn at the same time. You know, we all remember doing dioramas and the science fair project, and I got to build a pyramid out of wood that my dad's not really going to build, but you know, stuff like that. Like my wife misses, you know, helping make poster molds and just bring those kind of things back to where it's a creative and fun way for them to learn. And also not be just sitting there.
Well, one of the things you guys, just to remind you that you approved, was we did mystery science at the elementary this past year, even though it was through a pandemic, and the feedback we got was phenomenal. And then recently, you guys just approved the supply packs that will put the hands-on back in, at least for the elementary, which was an area that we weren't getting consistent science in. And but what's nice about that is it combines with the tech piece with the hands-on. So.
And there has to be a blend because Dan is right. Like technology is, it's not going away. It is part of future-ready learning. But Brian, I have help me here. The parent mentoring program you did at Washington, is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's Logan Square. That's who we partner with. They're state funded, and we will be in 6 buildings next year.
Okay.
We're adding Franklin.
Franklin's coming
Next year.
on board.
Okay. Because that's where I would, because that's been so successful.
My hair
Yes.
program.
Yeah, so let me continue.
And one of the things I think it needs to be said, that program is grant funded. So, because somebody asked me, why can't we just put that in every building immediately? And they've grown with us with their funding to allocate those funds to help support those mentor stipends, those parent mentors.
The parents get paid.
Yes. So when they have to reapply every year for their grant, we've just tried to grow at a pace that they can absorb to help us keep it going. So that's why, yes.
But to that, it also has, when we think about the diversity of all of our staff, not just our certified teachers, but our paras, our other licensed staff in the buildings, the parent mentors have really built up an interest in a variety of different families. A lot of our new families, a lot of families that speak different languages in the home, and engaging them through this parent mentor has been a really kind of fascinating pathway for those parents to be involved in the schools. And many of them are interested in pursuing the para license as an example and figuring out how they can increase their involvement. So that has helped us.
And with our partnership with WIU, with Dr. Meeker, we've expanded, because that program on Fridays gets those mentors together for PE for them. And, I remember one of the successes that Dr. Sapp just mentioned was a lot of, they're going to get their para license, but I had several Washington first year, they had got to pursue teaching. And that's the
It's kind of like an adult grow your own.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah, to try that.
Yeah.
How do we find individuals who are communicating?
So, can we say collaborative learning or
Right, yeah.
project-based learning,
Project-based,
something like
yes.
that?
Okay.
It's gonna be added once it's
I always get collaborative, I always spell it wrong.
Okay.
That's one of the words that it just.
Well, your handwriting is awesome.
No,
Yeah, it'll
but
look
this,
nice,
this,
but-
like, it's pet peeve because
There will be no judgment.
I'm a good speller, but that word always gets me. So, look at
C-O-L-L-A-B.
A-B.
O-R-E.
Or, yeah, it's just the first part that gets me.
Good job, Maria.
Yes.
I'm so proud of you.
Yes.
Because I love that.
I owe that to my mother-in-law.
We just had $45,000 in books, K-12, we sent home with tax.
And we did our, you'll see that as a budget, because we had our budget meeting for each game. We still had that budget.
And Mikado, we got folks going down to Mikado.
That's awesome.
We've been doing.
But did you say books?
Yeah.
Are they doing that again?
Yeah, the idea of the book packs was to target K-12 students because of COVID and that gap with especially those 1, 2, to make sure they had materials.
So we did that right before COVID.
Okay, I just want to say, as someone who's had to sit through a million meetings about smart goals, that if you have too many, it gets to be.
We don't want to get. We're not. Now I came to.
A lot of these can
like
be-
the smart goal part of this is all.
Yes.
on your end.
We will
Growing up.
synthesize.
Yes.
And I agree with you. I think in talking last year, I think having 2 big rocks for each of the 4 categories has been manageable. It doesn't mean we're not doing all of the other things on the side, but I agree, we can synthesize these into big rocks.
Your 3 to 5 year
Yeah.
goal. What'd you say? He is the highest performing district in the state for the next 3 to 5 years, so. Right on.
High performing.
Yeah.
I tell you what, our achievement data is looking really exciting. Big jumps.
Yeah. Our preliminary K-5 data, 2 years, we ran it 2 years, our mean writ on math, reading and math is almost, it's above where we 2 years ago. So we basically caught the gap. We closed the gap. Yeah, middle school is looking just as good, so.
All right, I'm not saying it's not doable, but
I think. Yeah, like. I know, Dr. Savage said I didn't hear, yeah.
We're there.
Yeah.
You're right though, Andy. I mean, achievement is our business and we are making gains. We are making some great gains and we're headed in the right direction. And I think we gotta have our eye
on those pieces. That goes I have.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah. True.
Well, I mean, it's right there, raising the bar. Yeah, it's
right there.
Oh, yes, right there. That should, as you said, we're in the business. That is our business.
I think we tie that into those career pathways. It's not just because I think there can be sometimes that focus on the high achieving that you associate that with people going to college and doing other stuff, but instead it's more of the high achieving so that our students are out there to be the best of whatever their next step is.
And I wrote this in for the start by when we were a huge school district and gave up high school too, but what do you think? I think the achievement we're doing it, we just gotta work a little bit more on the other. Like go back to this and definitely the diverse recruitment and this.
Anything else?
I think this would be a huge help to us, kind of pull things together. And the great thing about that I'm seeing is a lot of commonality with board priorities, our parent priorities, and really what our kids are telling us too. We're all, our arrows are kind of pointing in the right direction. So thank you so much for taking the time right after a holiday weekend. This helps us so much. We really appreciate it.
I really appreciate all the surveys and everything, from a student standpoint.
Yeah, this is good information.
Yes. Thank you for putting that together so we have that.
Thank you all for being here, hanging out, listening to us just right now. Great. We get around to some points eventually.
Eventually we get there.
Once my daughter hears that I did the right, she's like,
Maria,
you're a beautiful handwriting.
Go back.
Okay. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.